All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Well, my name is Sonia Gordillo, she, her, aya pronouns. I'm one of the pre-health advisors here in Tykeson College and Career Advising. Welcome to the Dental School Application Deep Dive. I'm going to let Amanda introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm the other pre-health advisor, she, her pronouns as well. And I think we're both really excited to do this workshop with y'all.
Absolutely. Small group today, so feel free to ask any questions as we're going through the PowerPoint. All right, and with that being said, here is our agenda for today. So we're going to go over the application timeline. We're going to do a deep dive of the AdSAS application portal. So that is a centralized application portal that you're going to use to apply to dental school. It's also known as the primary app. From there, we're going to talk about the cost of the application and financial support. And then from there, we'll transition into resources and next steps. There'll be time for Q&A at the end of this presentation. So if there is a larger question that you ask in the chat, we might save that for the end of the presentation. But any clarifying questions that you have throughout the PowerPoint, feel free to ask. Again, small group, so please, I encourage any questions. All right, so the application timeline. So first and foremost, the AdSAS application opens in May. So typically it is the first week of May where it is a soft opening date. And then there is a submission date that happens at the end of May. And so that is the first day in which you will be able to submit your primary application. So soft opening date, you can start working on the application, filling out all those detailed information. And then end of May, that's the first day in which you can submit the application. Though there are application deadlines that are individual by school, you want to submit as early as possible because many dental schools are rolling admissions. And so you want to be at the top of that line. So rolling admissions means positions are going to be first come, first serve. So the sooner you submit that primary application, the sooner you're going to be considered for an interview. Okay, and then application deadlines run through the following year into January, February. So interviews can happen as early as late July and run through the following year into the month of January. And with that, there are 2 periods in which there are admissions decisions that are sent out to applicants. So that happens in December and February. So for example, for this cycle that we're currently in, folks were notified as to whether they were admitted, denied, waitlisted, or on hold on December 15th. And then the next round of students will be notified mid-February. So I do get questions about what hold means. So hold means that basically the school's gonna want to take a look at other candidates and interview them before they make a final decision as to whether or not they want to admit you into the program or waitlist. For waitlist, I do want to mention that if you are on the waitlist, typically they do tell you the position on the waitlist, but you could be waitlisted all the way up to when orientation begins for the program, and that's typically in like June, July. So that can be a pretty long waiting period as well. So there's kind of like this awkward period of like, okay, I'm waitlisted. Should I start thinking about reapplying, or should I wait to see what other options are available and within a gap year plan? So if you're ever in that position, feel free that you're welcome to connect with pre-health advising, and we can help talk about strategies around that period and next steps, of course. All right, programs start in fall. So most programs are going to be on a semester-based system. So that's typically like late August in which programs start. So with the application opening in early May, that means that there are things in that, there are things about the application that you want to start early on. So one of those things is requesting letters of recommendation. So we would encourage you to start thinking about requesting that sometime in your winter quarter. So before like winter break would be a good time for you to think about, okay, who am I going to ask for letters of recommendations, and then start developing the plan for making those requests. Taking the DAT. So ideally you want to take that before you submit your primary application. Actually, you're required to take it before you submit your primary application. So ideal time would be February through March, and then you can push that timeline a little bit past that into April if you'd like. And then drafting your essays for your application. This part is pretty busy work. You want to start thinking about that personal statement you're going to be writing for your application. You'll need to submit a resume/CV. There's also an extracurricular description section. So you want to start building little paragraphs about your experiences, and then supplemental essays, which you'll have access to those supplemental essays once your AdSAS application opens in May. All right, so those are some of the things we recommend starting to work on before the application. And here is a snapshot of what the application would look like if you were to apply with a no gap year. So you would be applying between junior and senior year. So summer between junior and senior year, you're going to be working on that primary application. And then working on those other parts of your application even before then. That also means that you're going to be interviewing in your senior year. And so I would say many programs are still doing remote interviews, but some are transitioning back to in-person interviews, or they're offering either or as an option. So if you have to do an in-person interview, that means that you're going to be coordinating closely with your professors to make sure that there's a plan for any missed assignments or exams that you need to get caught up. If this doesn't feel realistic, that is absolutely okay. You can push this timeline down and do what I like to call an application year. So you're applying kind of right after you graduate from the University of Oregon. You're just jumping straight into dental school applications. Or you can push that even more and do a true gap year. And that allows you time to study for the DAT, gain some experiences such as observation hours, and other extracurriculars before you apply. And then, okay. All right, so before you apply, so the purpose of this slide is to essentially say there are some things that you need to get done before you apply. And so one of those things is observation hours. Many programs are going to have minimum observation hours required in order for admissions. But it's recommended that you go above those minimum hours so that you can get a better understanding about the field of dentistry, getting some breadth and depth of different types of dentists. And so in addition to that, you'll want to think about enhancing your application through other experiences. And Amanda will be talking about that here in the next slide. Exploring programs. That is a big part of your homework before you apply. So that means exploring programs through looking at website, doing a deep dive of their curriculum, learning about their program through info sessions, open houses, maybe health graduate school fairs. We have one coming up in spring here at U of O. So those are really great opportunities to learn about the program, what they're about, what connections they have to the community, and see if you can see yourself at that institution. And of course, complete the DAT, complete any prerequisites, or develop a plan to complete those. So there are specific prerequisites you need to complete for dental school. And then some of them vary slightly. So it's important to take a look at your list of schools you're interested in to make sure that you have all of them in your plan. The CASPER exam, we'll have a slide about that if you're not familiar with the CASPER. So we'll do a deep dive on that. And then letters of recommendation plan. I already mentioned a little bit about that, but also even before you start thinking about requests, it is thinking about how to establish a relationship with faculty so that you can make that request and feel confident that you're going to have a strong letter of recommendation. All right, Amanda, take it away.
All right. So if you're looking for other ways to kind of round out your application, or if maybe you've been really focused on coursework so far and kind of forgot about this piece, right? This is many of the options that you have in order to go about adding experiences and knowledge, right, about the field. So I always recommend starting with informational interviews and shadowing because they're very, low stakes, right? You're going to cold email a bunch of dentists. You're going to ask them to meet with you for like 20 or 30 minutes to kind of talk about their career path. And that's your opportunity to get perspectives on from them about what dental school was like, what their program was like, right? Maybe you're considering that program, right? You can also ask them about, or you should ask them, what is the worst part of the job, right? Is that something that you're going to be interested in doing, right? What's the best part of the job? The goal for an informational interview is to really just kind of find out more about that day to day and to build your network. At the end of your informational interview, it's always a good idea to ask if you can shadow or if they have other dentists to recommend to you to do more informational interviews or shadowing. So that's a great way to get started. All of these other tabs, I think, are a lot of the experiences that students think don't apply to their application because they're not strictly healthcare related or specifically related to dentistry, right? But that's not the case, right? Schools love to see that you're doing clubs. They have clubs, right? They want you to do clubs and then come there and do clubs there, right? And be part of the leadership there, right? Any paid work experience is good. Even if you are a Subway sandwich artist, the customer service skills that you're using are directly related to the skills you're going to be using to communicate with your patients, right? So literally anything that you're doing, right? Anything that's taking up a large chunk of your time, right? All of that is probably really great experience to put in your application. And if you're having problems figuring out what to say about them, right? Come up, make an appointment with us. We can talk about it. Now, some of the most important qualities that you definitely need to work on or enhance is developing and enhancing manual dexterity. This is unique, I think, to dental and optometry programs. They really want to see, some kind of description of you using your hands, right? Doing fine work. So if you want to learn an instrument, right? Now's the time. If you do art, right? Take a couple of classes at the art center, figure out different ways that you can kind of get or practice, right, this kind of fine work with your hands. Yeah. So consider doing some of these, all of these, maybe if you have the time, right? And again, this is where we kind of go back and forth on that application year versus true gap year versus no gap year, right? What makes sense for your plan, right? If you've been focusing on coursework this whole time, maybe you want to take a year off and just do all of these enhancing experiences, right? Before you apply. So think about that as well, right? Because trying to cram in all of these on top of coursework and studying for the DAT, all of that, getting your application together, it's a pretty big requirement, right? It's going to be a lot of work. So we want you to think ahead and we want you to apply when your application is at its best, right? The longer you wait, the stronger it is, right? The more that you can do, the more that you can show. Okay, and then the second thing you need to do in relation to that is to do the research on the programs that you're interested in, right? So figure out a list of programs that you want to apply to that you think you're a good fit for. I always tell students, don't think about making yourself competitive with other applicants, right? You're going to drive yourself crazy because you never know what they're doing, right? You don't know their situation, it's kind of a useless exercise. It makes more sense to think about these are the programs I really want to go to. How can I kind of curate my coursework and my experiences to make myself a good fit for that program? Because that's really what programs are looking for. They're looking for students that fit their philosophy, that fit their mission, right? They're not looking for, to pick the 5 best people out of this pool, right? They're looking for best fit overall. So when you're looking at programs, what are some things that you can consider, right? Well, one, you want to look at all of this quantitative information because these are all the kind of major requirements for admission, right? If you're not meeting their average GPA or their GPA requirement, we might want to have a talk on whether or not it's worth it to apply to that school, right? If they are really heavily preferring in-state applicants, right? Again, we might want to have a conversation. Does it make sense to apply there, right? Is your application fee going towards something that makes sense or is it kind of wasted money, right? And of course, getting a sense of the number of applicants versus the number of people interviewed. As you know from college admissions, right? The people who are trying to get into Harvard, right? That's a huge population. You're going to have a lot of different kinds of people versus somebody who's trying to get into a state school. You know what I mean? So you want to be kind of aware of what you're expected to be doing, right? Is this a super, super competitive school and they're looking for people who have a lot of experience, right? Or some kind of connection or research or something, right? What is the kind of extra pieces to the application that you need to kind of keep an eye out for, right? How competitive is it? Other deciding factors, think about your learning style, right? Think about the way that they've organized their curriculum, the class size, right? The length of the program, where they are kind of sprinkling in clinicals, right? Because some people will, or some programs will do like, here's a bunch of coursework, and then you do like 2 straight years of clinicals, right? Some people or some programs will break it up like, here's a quarter of coursework and here's a quarter of clinicals or whatever, right? So you want to think about how much hands-on experience you're getting and when you're getting that, and whether that makes sense for you according to your learning style, right? What's the program mission? Is this more of a school where they're really into doing research and they would rather have applicants who are into doing that? Or is this a school that's really focused on turning out dentists who are going to go work in underserved areas, right? What is the kind of mission of this school? What kind of organizations, faculty research, faculty organizations, right? What kind of things do they have in that program that might be interesting to you, right? Is it public or private? That makes a huge difference in terms of funding, right? And the funding that you get, as well as the funding that the school gets, right? And where's the location, right? You're probably going to be spending, at least 5 years there, right? Where is the place that you want to live? How comfortable are you going to be living there, right? And of course, what are the admission requirements, and whether they're doing remote or in-person interviews, right? All of that is going to make a difference, because you don't really want to waste your time and money on a place that you're not really interested in going to, or a place that you don't you don't meet all of their requirements, right? Waste of time, waste of money, waste of energy. Why do that, right? So it's much, much better to take the time now to just do a little bit of research, right? And if you're part of our Canvas, we actually have templates on there to help you keep track of all those details. And then you'll be much more relaxed and ready to apply. Okay, so tools to help you in your application journey. So the ADEA, right, the American Dental Education Association, puts out this guide for the application process. It goes over what is the dental profession, what is dental school like. It talks about access, diversity, and inclusion within the field. It gives you tips on navigating the application process. It tells you about how your application will be kind of assessed, right? It describes how the holistic process works. It has information for Canadian and international students who are applying to Canadian or US dental schools, and a chapter for US students applying to Canadian dental schools, right? So if you're thinking about going to Canada, right? Or, maybe you're an international student who wants to go to dental school here, right? That's all really good information. There's also a section for gap year students, career changers, and reapplicants, right? There's also information on funding your dental education. There's worksheets to help you gather information. And there are also there's a lot of data so that it can help you make informed decisions about where to apply. There are all those statistics that we were talking about, right? Number of applicants versus number of interviews, right? All of that information is going to be within this thing. You can also use it, right, as I just said, to explore these other dental schools. Now, the caveat, though, is that this costs money. So as you can see on the screen here, right, this official guide to dental schools is $35, right? It includes this PDF book and a 1-year subscription to this tool that you can use to search through programs, right? So it's kind of a bummer that you have to pay for it, but it's not that expensive, and it can be really indispensable in helping you with the application process. That being said, this is what it kind of looks like, right? So, AdSAS is the common application portal for dental school applications, right? And they've got a great quick start guide and a great FAQ. I really highly recommend reading through the quick start guide. to kind of understand the sections of the application and like what's required in each section. And I also recommend going to the FAQ, right? The FAQ always has a ton of great tips on like, here's the most common mistake that people make, right? Here's how to fix it, you know? And the Common Application Portal system can get very confusing. So definitely check those out. And also make good use of contacting them for support. The customer service portals are really great. They're paid to help you. They want you to succeed, right? So definitely do not be scared of contacting them if you run into problems. Okay, so we've done a lot of talking about the application. Let's talk about what's actually on it. So it's divided into kind of 4 big sections, right? And the first one is, your personal information. I think everyone's pretty familiar with this section, right? All of your regular information, your address, your name, right? Your U.S. citizen, your race and ethnicity, right? It is going to include a little blurb, right, for you to talk about any kind of environmental factors or issues that may have impeded your access to resources, to activities that might have enhanced your application, right? Anything going on like that, you do want to disclose there. And any kind of other information, right? Like, are you a veteran, right? Things like that. The next section is going to be your academic history. So you're going to put, what high school you attended, all of the colleges that you attended. If you took one class somewhere, you still need to send it in. You still need to say that you did it there. Transcript entry, that sucks. I'm sorry, but it's very much like filling out a job application. You turn in your resume, and then the next screen, they make you type out your resume and all those little boxes all over again, right? So same thing here, right? You're going to send in your transcripts, but you're also going to list all of your coursework, and you want it to match your transcript, right? So we highly recommend that you get an official transcript for yourself so you kind of know what's going on there. And of course, all of your standardized test scores, right? The DAT, right? The CASPER, all of that. The next section is all of the supporting information. So this is where your letters of recommendation or evaluation go. This is where you're describing your experiences, any achievements you've had, if you've won awards or scholarships, right? List them there. Any licenses or certifications that you have, and of course, your personal statements can get uploaded here. And then the last section here is all of the stuff that's directly related to each program, right? So you're going to enter the list of programs that you want to apply to. Then you're going to see that there's a supplemental essay section per each program. There, might be other kind of documents that you have to kind of put in. They might ask you to take something called the Cura assessment, which is kind of similar to like Casper and Preview in that it's kind of like a situational awareness exam / interview. There's no like content to study for. It's a strategy that you're going to use to kind of tackle whatever questions they ask of you. And then the prerequisite verification section per program. So each program is going to take a look at your transcript entries, and they're going to want to make sure and verify that you've fulfilled all of the prereqs for that program, right? Okay. Also part of this part of the application is going to be a release statement. And basically, this is going to be a release statement that allows us advisors to get information about your application from the application portal, right? So it's basically a way for us to kind of see a list of all of our students who have applied, where they have applied, where they've gotten in, where they've been waitlisted, where, all of that kind of information, which is just good for, us being able to know how well we're helping y'all, right? How well we're helping to prepare you for this application process. So please mark yes. All right, and then this is Sonia's section, so I'll let her go ahead.
All right, thank you. All right, so Amanda was able to give you like a generalization of all of those 4 different sections that you're going to be doing to fill out your application. So we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of those sections. First and foremost, we'll talk about the environmental factors subsection. So in this section, you're going to be asked about a disadvantage application consideration question, which I know sounds a little bit weird, but essentially it is asking if there are personal circumstances or experiences you want dental school admissions boards to consider when reviewing your application. So a disadvantage is any like circumstance, barrier, or obstacle which presented a roadblock to your schooling, academic development, or ability to successfully apply to dental school. A statement of disadvantage is different from like a diversity secondary essay or a personal statement. It outlines how you have overcome a hardship or difficulty. So they want to see how you have overcome adversity in your life. And so it gives you about 4,500 characters, 4,500 characters to talk about any life experiences to that nature. If you feel that you may have experiences that fall under this category, but you're concerned about talking about it or how to phrase or how to format your essay, feel free to schedule an appointment with us. We do 1 hour grad essay reviews, and that includes essays such as this. So we'd be happy to brainstorm with you on that. All right, personal background section. Oh, sorry, I apologize. I went ahead a little bit too fast. So I do want to mention the additional questions section. So in this section, they're going to ask about relatives in dentistry. So if you have any connections or any family members that are dentists, you're going to have to input that into your application. So it essentially asks for their names, when they went to school, and where they went to school. If you're applying to those specific programs, that gives you an opportunity for those programs to identify you for legacy. And then, of course, they're going to ask you a little bit more detailed information about childhood residency and family situations. Okay, here we go. So personal background section. So there are a few different sections that I particularly want to highlight here. So the first one is the dent pin. So the dent pin is a pin that you're going to create when you sign up for the DAT exam. So be sure to write this down in a place that you're not going to forget it, because you're going to be asked about it for when you fill out this ADSAS application. And it essentially replaces the Social Security number so that the application doesn't have to ask you for it. Alongside this, they will also be asking you if you will be applying to other health graduate schools, such as like medicine, PA, PT, etc. It's really important to be honest. Not being honest can be detrimental to your application. Here, we're practicing integrity. They want to make sure that you are being transparent with them. They want to know that they're bringing someone into their program that has integrity. And so please be sure to be honest about your application if you are applying to other health graduate programs. Let's see, for the academic infraction section, this is only for folks that have an academic probation stamp on their transcript or have had any conduct violations while at U of O or any other institution. It does not include like academic warnings. It doesn't include any department, college, or like scholarship standards or probationary status that you might have been in. It only includes academic probation, which is essentially not meeting the university standard of a 2.0 cumulative GPA or better. And if you do have a probationary stamp on your transcript, you get extra character space to talk about this. And so please utilize that opportunity to talk about any sorts of challenges that you faced during that period and how you overcame them. The educational interruption section is essentially they're asking if there was a time in which you had to step away from your undergraduate and then come back at a later time. And so if you mark yes for this, it'll give you extra character space to talk about it. Still encourage you to utilize that space. They're going to see your official transcripts. They'll see that you had to take some time off from your education, and they'll want to know a little bit more about it. All right. And this is also the place where you're gonna fill out that manual dexterity essay. And I say essay, but it's actually kind of like a small blurb. You get about 600 characters to utilize for this section. But it's important to note that you have an opportunity to talk about manual dexterity within ADSAS. So I think it becomes a conversation as to whether or not you want to talk about manual dexterity skills in your personal statement, because you also have an opportunity to do that here. So you may want to strategize your approach on communicating those skills in your application so that you're not repeating the same information. And there's ways to do that. Maybe in your personal statement, you want to talk about your dexterity skills in a research lab that you gain. And then in this part, you get 600 characters. It's not a lot. So you want to focus in on another dexterity skill that you've gained. Okay. So a little bit of additional tips there. Focus on like 1 to 2 skills or hobbies that highlight your dexterity skills. Detail those skills in detail so that they can really see those transferable skills that you've gained. All right. And lastly, there's also going to be a COVID essay, which is nice. It gives you the opportunity to really advocate for yourself and talk about any challenges that you've experienced during that period of time, whether it was educational, personal, or professional. So, for example, if you had a hard time transitioning to online courses during that period, during that COVID period, definitely talk about that and definitely highlight a skill that you gained from that experience. So maybe the skill that you're focusing on there is your adaptability skills, and then connecting that to how that's going to help you be a better student in dental school. Maybe another example is letters of recommendation. You know, online courses might have impacted your ability to build a close connection with faculty. This is your opportunity to talk about there. Okay, so if you need some brainstorming that you'd like to do with anyone, we're happy to support you with that. So feel free to connect with us. All right, academic history. Amanda shared a little bit about this. So again, you want to request an official transcripts from all of the colleges and universities in which you have received credit at. So of course, you'll request an official transcript to be sent from the University of Oregon to ADSAS directly. You don't want to send it to yourself and then ADSAS. It goes to ADSAS directly, okay? But you'll want to also request one from other institutions you have credit at. So if you got College Now credit in high school from Lane Community College or Portland Community College, you need to go to those institutions and request that they send one to ADSAS as well. Okay. What it doesn't include, what it doesn't include is any AP, IB, or College Now credit. So you'll need to request that through your University of Oregon transcript. And the next slide, we'll talk about that a little bit more. But know that for your application, aside from requesting an official transcript, you're going to go into ADSAS and input every single course you've ever taken in order. So it will be helpful for you to request an official transcript for yourself. And that means your U of O one and any other institutions that you have credit at. So you can see exactly what the folks in ADSAS sees and fill it out line by line. Okay. Because if you miss something or it's incorrect, then your application could get returned. So that just helps reduce that chance of that happening. In the academic history section, you're also going to select your major or minors if you have any. When you do this, it's going to populate a general list of majors that are offered across the nation, not specific to the University of Oregon. So select a major that you feel closest aligns with the major that you have. If you don't feel like any of those is closely related, then other major would be just fine. All right, so let's talk about how to request an official transcript. So in your AdSAS, this is what it looks like. You'll make note of the transcript ID by clicking order. So you see order right there in the middle of the page. You'll click on that and then write down that transcript ID. It's in the middle of that, what is it, under step 3 right there. So copy and paste that. You'll need it for when you request an official transcript through your Duck Web. So this is what your Duck Web will look like when you go in and make those steps to request an official transcript. Right there where it says AEMC ID, it'll list AdSAS ID because you'll select AdSAS as the institution in which you would like that official transcript to be sent to. And so that is where you're going to put that transcript ID number. And then you're also going to put in, oh yeah, transcript ID goes into that bottom section, but your AEMC ID, that is on the top right corner of your application. So if you see in this previous slide where it says my name, Sonia Gordillo, kind of hidden in that background, there's an ID number. And so that you're going to use to fill out this section here. So it's going to be AdSAS ID and then your transcript ID. Apologies for the confusion there. All right. And if you have any AP, IB, or any CLEP credit, you will need to request an addendum with your transcript. So to do that, pretty simple. You're going to open up a Word doc, and in that Word doc, you're going to put your name and say, I would like to request an addendum with my transcript for my AP credit or my IB credit, etc. Okay, you'll save that document and upload it here. So that is going to let the registrar's office know that they need to attach that to your transcript so that AdSAS can see exactly what credit you received at the University of Oregon. If you have AP credit, especially for courses in which are prerequisites for dental schools, then it's very important that you request that addendum because they'll want to see that you have Bio 211 credit or Calculus 251 credit, okay? Otherwise, if you don't request an addendum, it just shows up in bulk on that official transcript. Unfortunately, you can't request an addendum for yourself, but there is a place in your Duck Web in which is almost identical to what the addendum looks like. And so that is in that transfer evaluation report in your Duck Web. On that right-hand side, that is what that looks like. So you'll use that to fill out that first term in your transcript entry section. So if you have any AP credit, you'll input that here in your first term, as you can see on that right side. So here it gives you the example of Psych 201, Psychology, 4 credits, CR, that's what you list if you have AP credit for the grade. Okay. I'm going to pause there because that was a lot of information. Do you have any questions? Okay. All right. Perfect. So the transcript entry section, this is where you're going to put in all of your academic history line by line. There is a video tutorial that you have access to in that Help Center page. So feel free to access that to get yourself grounded on how to fill out this section. You'll also want to pull up the AdSAS course subject list because this is going to help you categorize how it's going to help you categorize these courses. And it's based off of the content of the course. So for example, biopsychology, that's Psychology 304. That course, you can essentially categorize it as either a biology course or a psychology course. If you label it as a biology course, then that means that course is going to be accounted for in your science GPA because they're going to use this to determine that science GPA. And that's also true for any like upper division anthropology courses that are more science-based. So you're welcome to play with that subject categorization to readjust things based off of the content of the course. If this feels like too much of busy work, there is an option to do a professional transcript entry. And so you can request for someone to do this for you, and there is an option for you to pay for that service. And so if it's one transcript, it's about 30 something dollars. And then if it's more than one, it gives you like a bundle deal. So you are welcome to use a professional transcript entry. Someone will fill this out for you. All right. All right, and then the AdStats prerequisite verification. So this is what that looks like. So basically, when you go into AdStats, you're gonna add all the schools in which you would like to apply to. It's gonna go into this program information section, and then you can click on one of the programs and it's gonna populate some information there. So you see home, questions, references, and then prerequisites. And so this is the PT CAS. So that's the physical therapy one. So for AdStats, it's going to look a little bit different, but it's essentially like home, questions, and then prerequisites. So you'll click prerequisites and go through the process of connecting your course to a prerequisite for that program. All right.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of other standardized tests that may or may not be required. So again, do your homework and take a look and see if any of those programs require these before you shell out the money to do it, right? So Casper, Preview, and Kira Talent are all, they're different from each other, but they are also vaguely the same, right? So they're all supposed to be assessing your kind of like behavior and like leadership qualities. I don't really know how it does that, right? I think, you know, it's still kind of debatable whether it does, right? But for now, they're trying it out. And basically what it does is it gives you a set of situations, right? And it could be ethical situations regarding like patients, right? So like, oh, you know, you have a minor patient come in who needs surgery, but their parent refuses. What do you do, right? It could be questions around ethics like, you have a coworker and you think that they may be an alcoholic and coming to work drunk. What do you do? Right. So there's no real like right answer, right? What they really want to see is evidence of how you think. Do you know what information to gather and how it's important and how it's going to make an impact on the decisions that you make and how to act, right? These questions are generally interview format. Sometimes they might be in a written format. Sometimes you might have a person asking you questions. Sometimes it might be asking you to record your responses in video, right? There are a couple of different kinds of formats for these tests, but it's all pretty much the same. They'll give you kind of a set amount of time in which to respond, right? And again, the goal is to kind of show them how you think. Now, this is kind of irritating because it's like this weird other test that you don't really know about. But you can prepare for the test. And I suggest that you do that by booking appointments with us for interview preparation, right? So these tests are all really, really similar to a particular style of interview for healthcare profession programs called the MMI or the multiple mock interview. Right now, it's mostly used by med schools. But I, you know, can see that it's branching out into other health professions as well. And honestly, it's just like kind of great to have in your pocket because it does really help you improve interview skills, like in general. It's great practice. You can book an hour-long appointment with us, so you can essentially prep for your interviews later on for those dental school applications as well as for these tests, right? And like I said, it's really more kind of like a mindset rather than searching for the correct answer. Okay, and then, so yeah, we're moving on to the supporting information section. And the first part of that section is going to be your personal statement. I know many people have a lot of questions about personal statements. That's totally fine. Feel free to put them in, but also know that we are doing a personal statement workshop later this quarter. And I'm going to answer like all of the personal statement questions then basically, right? Because it just makes more sense. But essentially, right, you're going to have a brief statement. It's about 4,500 characters, not words, right? So we're counting punctuation marks and spaces. And there isn't a real prompt, but it is basically, you know, you want to tell them like why you want to be a dentist, why you're so motivated and committed to the profession, that you know what the profession is about and have prepared for it by highlighting your skills, your coursework, your academic readiness, your knowledge of the profession, right? All of those things. Okay. But there's also room to describe your experiences. So as Sonia said earlier, right, we want to make sure that we're thinking about where we are kind of distributing this information. We don't want it to be too repetitive, right? So we want to kind of think about, okay, what are the stories we're going to put in our personal statement? What are the stories we're going to put in our experiences? What are the stories that we're going to talk about during our interview, right? So again, come in, let's talk about your personal statement. Let's talk about your experiences section, and let's kind of plan out how you're going to show them all of the sides of you, right, through these various parts of the application. So for the experiences, you have 7 different experience types to choose from. You get about 600 characters, okay, characters, not words, to describe each experience. And there's an unlimited amount of experiences that you can list from the past 10 years, from your college time, right? But you cannot list the experiences you're going to have. So for example, if you're taking an application year, right? So you're applying during your senior year and you haven't done shadowing yet, and you're planning on doing shadowing after you graduated and submitted your application when you have more time. While that seems like a great idea, that's actually not going to be great because you can't list those shadowing experiences on your application, right? Because they hadn't happened yet. So that is the most important thing, is that you really want to have most of your application materials done by the time you're ready to kind of send in your application. You're going to mark your 6 most important experiences, and they're going to get moved to the top, right? So that schools can see which ones are like the most important. And there's a separate achievement section for honors awards, and a separate section for any certifications, right? So if you're an EMT, if you have a dental hygiene certificate, right, or degree or whatever, right, you would put that, or license, you would put that all in this section. So you can also see the different kinds of the 7 different experience types on the right here, right? And again, notice that it is a large variety of kinds of activities, right? Not everything you have to do has to be specifically dental related. There's room here, and ambiguity, right, to talk about anything, right? Any kind of employment, any kind of volunteer work. Okay, so yeah. Right, evaluations. Okay, so letters of recommendation. Okay, so again, you want to be thinking about how all of the parts of your application are working together to present you as a full person, right? So we want to take this approach to your letters of recommendation as well. When you're thinking about who to request letters of rec from, right? Generally, programs prefer 1 letter from a science faculty, 1 letter from a supervisor or employer or manager, and 1 letter from a dentist. When you ask people to write these letters, you want to think about who can speak to your strengths, right? So you want to pick a science faculty that can talk about your academic performance, right? And this could be anything. So for example, if you started a sequence, like if you started out in Chem 221 with a C, but by the time you got to 223, you were making an A, right? Ask that professor, right? Because they've not only, sort of like witnessed your transformation here, right? But they've seen how you were able to improve across the whole series. That could be really valuable in terms of a letter of rec, right? So again, you want to be thinking about how these people are going to highlight the qualities that you want dental schools to know about. So you want to have a good relationship with them. You want them to know about your goals, right? You want them to know about where you're headed. And you want them to be able to speak to these things, right? So work on developing those relationships now, right? Especially when from a dentist, they're busy professionals. You want to stay consistent in your contact with them. Okay, so UO does not have a committee letter or letter packet system. So you're going to ask each faculty member individually. You have to waive your right to look at your letter of recommendation, right? They want it to be secret from you. So please waive your right to do that. You could use Interfolio to store your letter of recommendation. That is, like an online service that does exactly what I just said. It stores your letter of rec, and you can, use that system to send your letter of rec to your common application portal. when the time comes. So this is a really good option for people who are thinking about taking a gap year, right? Or maybe be doing something in between their time here at UO and when they are applying, right? Whether that's like traveling abroad or, whatever the case may be, right? If you're feeling kind of anxious that your professors won't remember you, use Interfolio, get those letters right now, and you have them all set for you leave. You can have up to 4 letters of evaluation in AdSAS, and you cannot designate your letter of evaluation to individual programs. So maybe you have a professor, or maybe you had a dentist who was like an alumni of a particular school that you want to go to. You cannot ask them to write a different letter for you for that school, right? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about designating your letters to individual programs, right? So that is something to be aware of. And we also are going to have a letters of recommendation workshop later this quarter as well. So please come to that. We'll talk more about how to develop those relationships with professors, professionals, employers, all of that kind of stuff. How to ask them for the letter, when to ask them, all of those details. Okay. Okay, so now here is the program materials section, right? So usually as part of this section is the supplemental essays and questions. Sometimes when you choose which programs you're going to apply to, it might automatically populate those supplemental questions. Some programs are going to wait until they actually receive your application, and then they will send you supplementals for you to complete once that happens, right? So just be aware, check your spam box, right? Make sure you're checking your email for that, because they will also usually have like a deadline. Like you'll get an email that says, okay, here are your supplemental questions. You have, 3 weeks to turn them in or whatever, right? This is also going to be the prerequisite verification section, right? So again, where you're kind of matching your courses to the prerequisites of those programs and telling them, yes, I did this, right? And then any additional documentation, right? So this is where your resume or your CV goes. If you are in-state, if you need in-state tuition documentation for that program, you're going to put it there. And this is also where you're going to put your observation hours verification, which sounds kind of scary, but it usually is just like a list of, when did you do those hours? How many hours did you do? Who did you do them with? Contact information, or they might have them, sign off on it, right? Okay, so next up, all right, take it away, Sonia.
All right, so the cost of the application. So AdSAS application costs $264 to send the primary application, and that includes to send it with one school. And then thereafter, to add additional programs, it costs $115. And then secondary fees, if there is any secondary essays that you have to submit, usually it's supplemental essays that are embedded within the AdSAS, as Amanda just described. But there are some programs that they don't have any supplemental essays in the application. They might send you secondaries that could range anywhere from $30 to $200. Sometimes there isn't even a cost for it. Additional costs. So in-person interviews, it's important to think about travel costs and budgeting for that, because you're going to need to pay for flight, hotel, food, etc. And so that can range anywhere from like $600 to $5,000, depending on how many programs you're doing in-person interviews for. The DAT exam, that is $525 to take the exam, but for every school that you want to send that score to, that's an additional fee of $35. And then thinking about DAT prep resources, that can range anywhere from $100 to $1,500. And then the CASPER exam is another one. If it's required by a program that that you'd like to apply to, you would have to take it. So that's $85 plus those submission score fees, so $15 for that. And then the acceptance deposit. So if you're admitted into a program, you do have to pay to hold your position for that program. So that can range anywhere from $100 to $1,000. So that is roughly like $2,000 to $5,000 that you're going to be paying for the application. So that is quite a hefty amount. So we bring this to your attention so that you can start thinking about your financial plan for paying for the application. With that being said, there are a couple ways to help reduce on those costs. There's the fee assistance program. So when you log into AdSAS on that top right corner where you see your ID, you can hit fee waiver and fill out that application. And so that covers the $265 of the initial application fee plus 3 school submissions. So that's a total of $494 that you are not paying for. So you need to apply as soon as you open the application because funds do run out. So highly recommend that you apply right away. And qualifications is based on family income and the federal poverty level. So take a look at their eligibility requirements to see if you're eligible. And if you do end up submitting any sort of like secondary essays, know that some programs might waive that fee that you have to pay to send that secondary. Reach out to them, say, hey, I was eligible for the fee assistance program. Is there any sort of fee assistance or fee waiver for submitting this secondary essay? I've seen many times that there's many programs that do say yes to that, and it doesn't hurt to ask, right? And then in addition to that, there is also a DAT fee waiver. They call it a waiver, but it's kind of like a coupon. So it covers 50% of the DAT fee. So that is a little over $250. All right, and then I do want to mention our healthcare related scholarships. I know that you've been getting some emails about it, but highly recommend that you apply to that pre-dental scholarship. I know last year, folks that received that scholarship, it was like about $5,500 given to each applicant that received the scholarship. And so if you are junior and freshman, sophomore, junior, take a look at those eligibility requirements and apply. Highly recommend it.
I just want to jump in here real quick and say that there are also free DAT prep resources on our Canvas page in the standardized testing tab for dental. we do have a spreadsheet there that kind of lists all of the kind of free resources online that we have, right? And usually people do a kind of like a combo of the free stuff and pass the DAT just fine, right? So you definitely don't need to pay for a test prep course. But I do recommend it to students who are really bad test takers, right? If you have a lot of test taking anxiety, I do recommend that you take a course because they'll be able to lay out how the test like works, right? So if you remember, back to your SAT days, right? There's all of that stuff of like, yeah, the multiple choice questions have these 2 answers that are going to look really similar to each other. And that's how you know it's one of those 2 answers, right? There's going to be little tips and tricks about the DAT as well, because all of these tests are written in a particular style to achieve a particular kind of goal, right? So doing one of those test prep courses just to learn about those kinds of things can be really helpful in easing your test anxiety.
All right, so we're nearing the end of the presentation. Do you want to quickly talk about the verification process? So when you submit your primary application, you are going to submit the application, pay the fee, or go through that fee waiver process. And then it'll be marked as application complete once your official transcripts are in the system, and then once the professional transcript entry has been completed, if you go through that process. Your application is verified once they confirm that all of your academic history looks correct and they have all of those documentations. If something in your academic history section is incorrect, that is gonna mean that your application will get returned and then you'll have to resubmit it for verification. And it does take roughly like 1 to 3 weeks for your application to be verified. So that is important if you are going to be applying closer to the deadline. Be sure to not apply by the deadline. Apply earlier so that it can go through this verification process. All right. And once you submit your application, there are some parts of your application that you will not have access to. So many of those parts are the ones in which you have to write essays for. So personal statement, your experience descriptions, supplemental essays that you've already submitted for programs, course entry section, COVID essays. So that is why it's really important for you to gather all of that information, start organizing it into like a Word doc and working on those before the application opens, and be connecting with us throughout that process to get some feedback on those essays. There's an academic update period for ADSAS. So once you submit your primary application, let's say you're doing a no gap year, and then you put in your application that you're going to be taking the physics sequence in your senior year, or maybe you're taking some summer courses. And you want to update that in your application. So there's update periods between August through September and then December through February. So if you submit your applications and it didn't include like your spring term grades and your summer grades, and you want to make sure schools see that, definitely use that update period for August through September, because sometimes that could determine whether or not they're going to invite you in for an interview. It really could make a difference in your application. So highly recommend that you use those options.
And then another reason why you might want to do an application year or a gap year, just saying.
Right. Yeah, because schools can see more academic history in your application. So yes, absolutely. And then I believe that was everything I was going to mention there. All right, so that was a lot of information. So here it's kind of summarizing what things you should be working on. So letters of evaluation plan, that's your pre-work, your personal statement, COVID essay, all of those different essays that we just talked about, and thinking about the DAT and the CASPER. I know it says GRE, that's a mess up on my end. But thinking about taking the DAT and the CASPER. And then when the application opens in May, then you're going to go in and request official transcript to be sent to the application portal. You're going to start filling out that academic history and doing that verification process. Enter the letters of evaluation request. So that's where you're going to actively go in and put in the name of the instructor you requested a letter of recommendation from, and that will ping them an email so that they can submit it. Okay, and organize your supplemental essays. Like go in, look up the additional questions for each one of those schools and organize it into a document. So your post work, so once you submit that primary application, be checking your email regularly, check your junk mail, check that spam folder, because you don't want to miss out on an opportunity to submit secondaries essays or be invited in for an interview. That would be a huge bummer. If you want to be proactive, schedule mock interviews so you can start gaining that practice. And yes, that is everything there. And then next steps. So one of the things we're going to do is we are going to create a discussion group in Canvas. And that will be an opportunity for folks that are going to be applying in the upcoming cycle. So that's the 2024-2025 cycle, to kind of come together as a community and ask questions, because it's possible that a question that you have, somebody else already figured out the answer to. And so it's just an opportunity for us to build some camaraderie together. Maybe you want to do a mock interview with another peer, or maybe you want to connect with someone to kind of swap personal statements and give each other feedback. That is a place for us to kind of build that community. So keep your eyes.
You're looking for someone to go to an info session with you.
There you go. Yeah. So we'll be building that, I believe, in the next week or two. So you should see a posting on that. With that being said, you should have access to our pre-health advising Canvas site. So when you log into your Canvas, hit the arrows and swap into the community Canvas site. You'll see it there. Log in and check out all of the resources that we have there. Amanda built this. She did a wonderful job of giving you just a lot of resources. And so check out the announcements as well, and then the calendar page.
And then the email that we sent earlier today, there's a little video, right, on how to kind of access the Canvas and all of those details.
All right. And then, of course, we have letters of recommendation and personal statement workshop coming up. So feel free to join those as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask us, okay? All right.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in, everybody. If you have questions that you want answered right now, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll stick around and answer any questions, or you can bring them up in the Canvas site, right?
All right. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.